Corruption, warlords, terrorist cells, and the specter of civil war all threaten efforts to stabilize Afghanistan in the wake of the 2014 U.S. military drawdown. In her new book, Aspiration and Ambivalence, fellow Vonda Felbab-Brown examines the country's past, the pitfalls hampering a peaceful transition, and the path forward. In part one of a four-part video series, Felbab-Brown looks at the problems of this war-weary nation.
Afghanistan has made certainly progress in some important areas over the past 4 years. The Obama administration put far more resources into Afghanistan than the Bush administration. However, it also inherited Afghanistan at the state of acute crisis. The security situation was very bad, and a review that General McChrystal did in 2009, I think very correctly indicated that large parts of the country could easily fall fully into the hands of the Taliban. So the surge reversed some of that, the military surge reversed some of that. But how robust these reversals are, how robust the improvements in the south of the country, and particularly in Helmand and Kandahar, are, is yet to be seen. And there are very many ominous signs. There is a great deal of instability in Afghanistan that goes beyond simply the Taliban and affiliated insurgency. But critically, one area that has been systematically underemphasized by both the Bush administration and the Obama administration is the state of governance, which many Afghans really believe that they are living in a mafia rule, in an unaccountable, thuggish, exclusionary mafia rule. And it's very hard to imagine how, whatever military progress there can still be, the country could continue with the same political dispensation that it has, unless there is some resurrection of legitimacy and accountability in the country. And fundamentally, that is lacking. Perceptions are very different among Afghans, and the narratives are strikingly different. So particularly the Obama administration, which increased resources far more so than the Bush administration, found it critical to focus on counterterrorism as the key and crucial objective for Afghanistan. And counterterrorism was defined primarily as anti-Al-Qaeda operations. So the objective of going to war was destroying Al-Qaeda safe havens that have entailed either eliminating at some point or at least later on beaten down the Taliban. But both the Bush administration and the Obama administration really never resolved whether counterterrorism also means state building. So both governments were really very leery to use the term, and neither of them did, but they would at some time consider using the term nation building, which in many ways is rather inappropriate, because Afghanistan is a nation. People very much identify as Afghans. There is a sense of nationhood. What is been troubling for the history of Afghanistan is the state and how individuals relate to the state, how state relates to individuals. So the question of state power has been highly contested, but not the question of nationhood, unlike, for example, in Pakistan across the border. But nonetheless, both administrations struggled with whether counterterrorism can be done in a very sort of surgical, narrow way, simply killing the targets, killing key Taliban leaders and killing key Al-Qaeda leaders, or whether one needs to have a broader project that also focuses on stability in the country and building in an accountable and sufficiently stable political system that has legitimacy with the Afghan people. And the constant oscillation has been highly detrimental to how we have conducted our policy. And in fact, as time went on, we kept continually defining the mission in narrower and narrower counterterrorism terms, strongly implying that the political arrangements in Afghanistan don't matter, or that they matter only in a very narrow sense. And that kept continually disappointing the Afghan people, because from their perspective, it is the immediate political dispensation, it is the power arrangements that are the dominant concern. Yes, people do not wish to see foreigners, people in the United States, hurt as a result of Al-Qaeda operations, for example, but their primary objective is what is their security environment, what is their access to justice, how much threats they face from corrupt warlords or abusive power brokers, whether they are on the Taliban side or the government side. And so by continually talking only about very narrow counterterrorism objectives, anti-Al-Qaeda operations, destroying Al-Qaeda safe havens, which resonated with the US public and Western publics, we kept disappointing the aspirations of the Afghan people, who really wanted to hear that yes, we will make sacrifices on behalf of the foreigners, but we will also get something out of it, and the something being a reasonably accountable government that delivers the necessary services so that people can make their everyday needs, and that has enough accountability so that people have access to justice. Much of the strategy and implementation in Afghanistan since the invasion turned out extremely problematic. There have been a series of mistakes committed both by Washington and the international community, as well as critically by Afghan leadership, Afghan government, associated warlords. And so we steadily got to a point where the insurgency picked up and there is less and less stability. You will hear certainly US government officials and military officers, ISAF military officers, often arguing and providing evidence that the smooth transition is still possible and the stability can still be achieved. I think that it is a hope at this point rather than any degree of certainty. I would not even give the chances at 50%, but there are still possibilities that can still be done. And certainly, instability is not uniform. Even if there is instability, that does not necessarily mean full-blown civil war. It doesn't mean full-blown civil war in every single place. What I am highly skeptical, however, is that there can be any sort of stability if we either rush out very quickly, if we abandon the project and decide that it's time to withdraw whatever military resources we have left very quickly, very rapidly. I think that's a prescription for failure and really for encouraging a breakup of the country into a meltdown into civil war. But equally, simply the military project is not sufficient.